Okay, so Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Last week, we completed the first chapter of Fihi ma Fihi. In the first chapter of Fihi ma Fihi, there were three main sections. The first section was about the relationship between ulama and umara, the scholars and the rulers. And Maulana said that the true scholars are those whose knowledge is awwalan wa akhiran bara'i khuda. First and last, it's all for Allah, it's all for God. Whereas there are other scholars who learn for gain, for material gain, for rank, for position. And he talked about that. So the scholars who are independent of umara, of power, and their reliance is on Allah, and those who are not. And then the second section was Maulana's commentary on a verse in the Quran and the story of Abbas. And again, it was about putting your reliance in God, not in yourself, not in your power, not in your abilities, in your skills, but in God. And you had the story with Abbas, who had hidden his wealth in a wall. And there was also that point that Gusha Del, the Prophet ﷺ, he had the ear of his heart. He could, and the eye of his heart. He could see and he could hear, and how Abbas came to true faith and believed. And then the last section from last week's chapter was Maulana's counsel to Amir Parvaneh, who was the Wazir of the Saljuqs, and Maulana gave him counsel. Again, he said the same things. He said, don't put your reliance on yourself. That's what you did, and that's when you went wrong. At first, you came and you said, I'm going to be the support of Muslims, but you put your support in yourself, you trusted yourself. That's when you went wrong. You betrayed Muslims. And you were responsible for the killing of so many people in Egypt, in Syria. And he said, this is why we need to constantly ask Allah to show us the way. As the Prophet, even the Prophet ﷺ, who was illumined and illuminating, who was Sirajan Munira, as the Quran says, the brightest lamp. And yet, despite that, he would pray, Arinil ashya'a kama hi. God, show me things as they are. Because we can be deceived. Appearances can be deceiving. Appearances can fool us. So that was another main point from last week's section. Okay, so yes, inshallah, let's start chapter 2. Brother Abdul Rahman, if you don't mind.
Chapter 2. Someone said, our master is not saying anything. Well, I replied, this person has been projected up to my presence by a mental image of mine. This image of mine did not ask him, how are you, or how do you do? My mental image attracted him here without the use of words. If my reality attracts him without words and can remove him hence to another place, what is so strange about that? Words are but shadows of reality. They are, as it were, a branch of reality. If the shadow can attract, how much more so can the reality attract? Words are just pretexts. It is the element of sympathy that attracts one man to another, not words. If a man should see 1,000 prophetic or saintly miracles, it will profit him nothing if he does not have sympathy with the prophet or saint. It is that sympathetic element that unsettles and disquiets. Were there no element of sympathy to amber in straw, then straw could never be attracted by amber. The sympathy between them is hidden, however, it cannot be seen. The mental image of anything brings a man to that thing. The image of garden brings him to a garden, the image of shop to a shop. There is, however, a deception hidden in these images. Don't you see that often when you go to a place you are disappointed and say, I thought it would be better. It wasn't what it was supposed to be. These images are like shrouds and one can hide beneath a shroud. When the images are dispelled and the realities appear without the shroud of the mental image, there is a reawakening. When the case is thus, there is no occasion for disappointment. The reality that attracts you is nothing other than itself, the day whereon all secret thoughts and actions will be examined into. What is this of which we are speaking? In reality, the attractor is one, but it appears to be many. Don't you see how a person often has 100 different wants? I want vermicelli, I want pastry, I want sweets, I want fritters, I want fruit, I want dates. These appear to be many different wants that have been expressed verbally. The origin of them all, however, is one, and that is hunger. Don't you see that when this same person has had his fill of any one of these things, he will say, I don't need any of the rest. It is obvious, therefore, that there were not 10 things or 100, but only one. We have expressed the number of them only for an occasion of discord. This multiplicity among people is deceiving, for they say, this is one, and these are 100. That is, they say that a saint is unique, while the many they call 100 or 1,000. This is a great deception. This way of thinking this way of thinking you have that calls the many multiples and the one unique is extremely deceptive. We have expressed the number of them only for an occasion of discord. Which 100? Which 50? Which 60? People, lost and uncontrolled, without reason, mindless like a talisman, they quiver like mercury and quicksilver. Will you call them 60, 100, 1,000, and yet call this one one? You might as well call them nothing and him 1,000 or 100,000 or 1,000,000. Few if counted, many in force. A king once gave a single soldier the rations for 100 men. The army protested, but the king said nothing. When the day of battle arrived, all the men fled the field, except that one soldier who fought alone. There you are, the king said. It was for this I fed you. I fed one man as 100.
Thank you, Brother Abdurrahman. Thank you. The first section is یکی میگفت که مولانا سخن نمیفرماید. Someone was saying our master is not speaking, is not talking. And then this is Maulana's answer. گفتم آخر آن شخص را نزد من خیال من آورد. What inspired this person to come to me? It was imagination. He imagined me first. And that imagination led him here without any conversation, without any talking. It was just that force, that magnetism. So there was no words. بی سخن خیال او را اینجا جذب کرد. Without any words, that imagination attracted him. جذب, attraction. اگر حقیقت من او را بی سخن جذب کند و جای دیگر برد چه عجب باشد. Now, imagination can attract people. People can be attracted with this pull, with this magnetism of imagination. Then how about essence? How about reality? Even more so. Even more so. So Maulana is saying my words, as important as they are, they're secondary. What matters is the state, is the spiritual state. As he says in the Ghazals, right? His poetry is secondary. And he says, مرد سخن را چه خبر از خاموشی همچو شکر. How does a man of words know about silence? And then he says, آیه نعم مرد مقالات نیم. I'm a mirror. I'm not a man of words. I'm not a poet. You can only understand me if your ears become eyes. دیده شود حال من ار چشم شود گوش شما. Rather than just listening to the poetry or listening to the words, you need to go deeper. You need to see, and you need to see the states. He says, سخن سایه حقیقت است. Words are shadows of reality. و فرع حقیقت. And they're branches, but you need to go to the root of the root of the root. So, yes, the words can attract you, but what matters ultimately, what is more important is the state, is reality. سخن بهانه است. The words are just pretexts. And then he goes on to say, what is it that attracts people to people? What is it that attracts people to prophets and saints and awliya and anbiya? It's not their words. It's jinsiyat, what Maulana calls jinsiyat. So you can translate it as affinity or resonance, being similar. So there are people who see 100,000 miracles. They see 100,000 karamat, saintly miracles, or prophetic miracles, mu'jiza, bayan, and explanations. They see all of that from the prophets, and yet it doesn't profit. It doesn't benefit them. Why? Because there's nothing inside them that resonates with what the Prophet is saying, or the Prophet is bringing, or that wali of that saint is bringing. So because there is no affinity, there is no resonance, all of those miracles do not help. And it is this affinity that attracts people to that Prophet or to that saint. And Maulana says this in the Masnavi as well. He says, موجب ایمان نباشد معجزات. موجب ایمان نباشد معجزات. It's not miracles that bring people to faith. موجب ایمان نباشد معجزات بوی جنسیت کند جذب صفات. What brings people to faith is بوی جنسیت, the fragrance of affinity, fragrance of resonance. And then he says, معجزه از بهر قهر دشمن است. Miracles are there to subdue the enemies. You know, people like Pharaoh, people like Abu Jahl. Those are the people who needed miracles to be subdued, not to believe. But معجزه از بهر قهر دشمن است. Miracles are there to subdue enemies. بوی جنسیت پی دل بردن است. But the fragrance of affinity is there to win hearts. And then he gives examples, right? He gives examples of Abu Bakr and Abu Jahl. چون Abu Bakr از محمد برد بو گفت هذا ليس وجه كاذب. He said, this is not a face that will lie. On the other hand, Abu Jahl, چون نبود بو جهل از اصحاب درد, because he was not like the Prophet. He didn't have the same passion. He didn't have the same pain. چون نبود بو جهل از اصحاب درد دید 100 شق قمر باور نکرد. He saw the moon split 100 times, he didn't believe. Because he didn't have that affinity. That's what Maulana is saying here. He's saying miracles, explanations, words, they only help if there's something in you that resonates, something in you that is similar to what that wali is saying or that Nabi is saying. Okay. Any reflections, thoughts so far? And yes, he gives an example. He says, در کاه اگر از کهربا جزوی نباشد هرگز سوی کهربا نرود. Why is the straw attracted to amber? That's the static electricity. Because there's something similar. There is again, Maulana uses jinsiyat. And here it's been translated as sympathy, but I don't think it's accurate. It's more of resonating and affinity and closeness, jinsiyat. So, or ahliyat. Maulana calls it different names, or being mahram. That jinsiyat is what attracts the straw to the amber. And it's hidden. It's not something that's obvious. It's subtle. It's hidden, but it's there. Yes, Kenza.
Yeah, just a quick word. Like jinsiyat in Arabic, it has become nationality, no?
Mm-hmm.
But here, I think it's more like affiliation. You think it would work rather than sympathy?
Yes, sympathy doesn't
basically
really
they're kind of the same, or the same source, or have something in common. That in Arabic anyway, that's what jinsiyah would mean.
I think maybe in this context it means typology, like jins, that like a typology, like a pattern maybe.
Yes, it's basically having things in common, to put it in simple terms. Maulana has a story about it later on in the Masnavi. He says someone saw a stork, lak, it's stork in Persian, and a zarq, a raven. Someone saw them together, and he was wondering, like, what do these guys have in common? What do these two have in common? And then he went closer, and he was bewildered, and he realized both of them had the one Buddha and lang. Both of them were lame. So they had something in common. Anytime someone is attracted to someone else, anytime people come together, it's because they have something in common. Like the reason we're together.
Yeah, it sounds like the Arabic and the Persian language. They have something in common.
Something in common, totally. And
the same jins.
Absolutely. Yes, Masood.
So from this wonderful introduction, I derived three things, and you touched upon them. Number one, the essence of what attracts someone or draws them closer is always one. I mean, a single truth or single reality, even if it appears in different forms or through various means. And this aligns with the idea that everything stems from one source, and this source is this divine truth. It is the number one. And number two, as I understand, people, or we often see diversity in the world, in the physical world, and it is attractions, desires of food, drink, or other pleasures. But these are essentially manifestations of the same truth. Once the veil of illusion is lifted and the singularity of reality becomes clear, as I understand. And last thing, it is about illusion and clarity. The human imagination often projects complexity and multiplicity onto reality, which leads to confusion or misunderstanding. However, when the illusions of imagination are removed and truth appears single or simple and obvious.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Yes. And that's what Maulana clarifies later on in this passage. Imaginations can be deceiving. How to remove that deception of imagination.
I was reminded by this passage of quote from a very wise man that he said that Allah has two types of hujjah. One is the hujjah al-zahir and the other is the hujjah al-batin. And the hujjah al-zahir is the prophets and the books and revelations. And the hujjah al-batin is al-uqul, is the aql. I don't know how to, the intellects. Yes, I don't know how to exactly translate it to English. So it's actually a nice thing to consider that when looking at the concept of religion and the prophets and how it works.
Yes.
Because I think later on, even you also talked about the idea that Abu Bakr listened to the same thing as Abu Jahl did, but one of them believed and the other did not.
Yes.
So so I think the difference that it makes in terms of religion is that the intellects and the divine thoughts and revelations are of the same gens, if you look at it by how Maulana puts it. So in a way, believing a real source of believing is actually to find your jinsia with the divine. So if you have something inside you that resonates with what you read and what you see in the holy text, then you can call yourself a true believer. Otherwise, you will say you will keep praying and you will grow a long beard, but you may just go and blow somewhere off, or you may lie, or you may deceive others. Why do you have this superficial faith? It's because that sort of resonance is missing. So it just reminded me of something, and a little further down, Molana mentioned something about hunger and different types of food. So again, intellect and wahy, I think, could also be of the same thing, and only different ways of looking at it. So one is the inner and one is the outer, and then the inner meets the outer, then it resonates.
Absolutely, absolutely. Later on in the Masnavi, Maulana comments on the hadith, al-hikmatu dallatul mu'min. Wisdom is the lost object of the believer. And wherever he finds it, he has claim to it. And Maulana says the lost object, it means when the believer hears wisdom, it could be wisdom from Anbiya or Awliya or sages, he recognizes that I know this. It's a recognition. I've lost this. I had this once and now I've lost it. So there is that resonance between what he reads or hears and then what is inside him. It's not something new. It's not added on. It's something deep within us. What the prophets say or what the awliya say, it resonates with what is inside you. That's when you really understand. Yes, Masood.
I have a question. The issue of Abu Bakr and Abu Jahl. We see same thing. For example, on Sadi Shirazi, he said in Gulistan, the children of Adam are limbs of one body, created from the same essence. Or same thing we see actually on Fariduddin Attar in the Conference of the Birds. And then he say that when they reach the presence of Simurgh, they saw themselves as one in Simurgh. Or Jalaluddin Muhammad Rumi say same thing. And the question is, since the essence of all of us is one and the same, how is it that Abu Bakr differs from Abu Jahl?
Yes, it's, later on in this passage, Maulana explains when you spend time with people who don't have tamyiz, people who can't discern, then you lose your discernment, you lose your senses. So the people you surround yourself with affect you, the surroundings affect you. And again, in this, Maulana has a story in the Masnavi. There is this person who is a tanner, and their job implied working with cow dung. So he was always around those, he was used to that kind of smell. And then one day he goes to a perfume shop, and all those beautiful perfumes, he says to himself, oh, what an ugly smell, because he's used to that. People become accustomed to what they're surrounded with. So I think that's what's going on there. So Abu Jahl lost his senses, lost his spiritual senses. So he saw the Prophet outwardly, but he didn't see the Prophet inwardly. He didn't hear. He lost his inner ear. He lost that happens over time. And it can be reawakened, right? So it's, for a lot of us, we're somewhere in the middle. There's hope. We need to reduce the jahl in us, so we'll be less of an Abu Jahl, and increase the tasdeeq in us, the belief in us. Does that make sense? Yeah.
Yeah, sure. Thank you.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. It's very powerful.
Thank you. Yeah, Brother Abdullah.
Thank you for that explanation, Sina. As ever, it's helpful. I was thinking of the line from Surah Yasin that you can only warn those who, Khashir Rahman bil Ghaib, fear the Rahman or have awe.
Absolutely.
And then I was also thinking about the Masnavi passage in which Abu Jahl says to the Prophet, who are you? You're nothing special. And then Abu Bakr says, in the next breath, so to speak, you are a son of mystery. I can't remember the phrasing. So if you are in awe of your sustainer, who is unseen to you, and you fear them in that way, in the unseen of your own self, when you're not around other people, then you will, that's your focus. Your focus is on that. But if you're often, not in Abu Bakr's case, but if you're wealthy, you're bored, a bit jaded, you think you know everything, there's no space for wonder, there's no space for amazement, and then you need then you need those kinds of miracles. Whereas if you're open to the miraculous wonder of life, then you can see wonder there. So it really does begin with your own vision, I suspect, and company is important, which is also sohbet. Yeah,
absolutely. Again, Maulana says in the Masnavi, dar dil har ummati ke az haq maze ast, those people who have the taste of truth in them, ruy o avaz payanbar mu'jiz ast. The face of the Prophet and the voice of the Prophet is a miracle. They don't need the splitting of the moon. They don't need any of that. The face of the Prophet is a miracle. The miracles are for those who don't have that taste, right? who don't have that taste, they don't have that sense of affinity. They need those miracles to be overpowered. Yes, Masood.
I think the turning point here is about turning towards Muhammad Mustafa, whose essence is the essence of all, and listening to him. If he, Abu Jahl, if he had listened to Mustafa's voice, he would have called him Abu Hikmah instead of Abu Jahl.
Yes. And yeah, the main point for us is, if we want to understand the Quran better, we want to understand the sayings of Rasulullah better, or the words of Maulana better, we also need to work on ourselves. So it's not just academic study. Right? Even the Quran in Surah Al-Baqarah, it says, Hudan lil-muttaqin. This is guidance for people who have piety. So people who are Quranic, who realize that in themselves. But if you just study it academically, it's not guidance for you. Maybe you learn a little bit about the terminology and words and contexts, and you become learned, but it's not guidance in the spiritual sense, unless you have the Quran in you. You are muttaqi, and then it's becomes guidance for you. Or like the verse in Surah Yasin, exactly same concept. So Maulana says imaginations can also deceive us. First of all, he says imaginations take us to places. So khiyal bagh be bagh mibarad. At first, you imagine a garden, and then you go to the garden. So thinking about it comes first. At first, you think about starting a business, and then the business starts. That's later. So khiyal dukan be dukan. You think of a shop, and then you go to the shop. But be careful, because that khiyalat tazvir pinhan ast. Imaginations can be deceiving. And it happens all the time. You go somewhere, you think it's going to be good, but no, it turns out it's not as good as you thought it would be. Or the other way around. As the Prophet's prayer, Arin al-ashya'a kamahi, show me things as they are. As in khiyalat bar misal chadorand or chadarand. These imaginations are like chador. So chador can be, in Persian, it can be tent, or it can be the cloak. In Iran, the women wear chador. So that chador kasi penhan ast. There's someone hidden beneath that. So there is appearance and there is essence. There is zahir and there is batin. You need to go towards the essence. You need to not be deceived by the appearances. And when those appearances are removed, and you see the realities, the chadar khiyal, and the tent or the cloak of imagination is removed, that is qiyamah, that is resurrection. And Maulana says, for some people, don't have to wait for Yawm al-Qiyamah. Their qiyamah is here, because for them, for awliya Allah, the veils are already removed. So they can see the essences of things here and now in this world. And that's when there is no regret, because they know the essences of things. And Maulana quotes the Quran, Yawma tubla as-sarair. That's the day when all the veil or the curtains are removed. All your secret thoughts, all that's hidden in you becomes manifest, becomes clear. And then Maulana says, we all want one thing ultimately. Kashande yakist. What attracts us, what draws us, there's only one thing. We think we want many things. Don't you see that people want a lot of things? You know, you say, Tutmaj khaham, burak khaham, halwa khaham, qaliya khaham. I want this, these are foods in Maulana's time. I want biryani, I want tajin, I want kebab, right? I want rice, all these different things. But you want all of these things because you're hungry. Once you eat one thing and your hunger is no longer there, then you don't want any of the other things. So aslash yakist. The root is one. The source is one. The source is hunger, and that's one. And then Maulana says, we're hungry for Allah. We're hungry for God. We're thirsty for God. We think we want wealth. but that's because Allahu al-Ghani, and that's a divine quality. We think we want knowledge, but again, that's a divine quality. We think we want peace, but as-salam, that's again Allah. So all we want is Allah. And we think we want so many different things, but ultimately what quenches our thirst is being with Allah. As معلوم شد که 10 و 100 نبود. It was not 100 desires, 10 desires. It was just one desire. We all have one desire ultimately. بلکه یک بود or یک بود. And then Maulana quotes the Quran, وَمَا جَعَلْنَا عِدَّتَهُمْ إِلَّا فِتْنَةً. The number is a fitna, it's a trial, it's a test. People get distracted by numbers. They don't understand the true reality because of numbers. And this is why people think that the saint is one, and then these other people, there are 100 people, 1,000 people. But they don't realize that those 100,000 people are 100,000 empty people. And this one person is, as the Quran says, Kana Ibrahim ummatan. Ibrahim was a nation. He was one person, but he was a nation. Ummatan qanatan. So he was 100,000 people in one, Ibrahim. So people, because of their ignorance, they think that, oh, this prophet is just one person, and then we have 100,000 people. But no, those 100,000 people are empty. And this one person is an ocean. Right? And yeah, the rest is elaborating on that same concept. People think that the saint is one, the others are many, but which 100, which 50, which 60? The verse in the Quran, it comes from Surah Muddathir, right? So in that surah, it says the guards or the angels that guard hellfire, there are 19. And then the mushrikun, they made fun of it, they mocked it, and they said, you know, there's hundreds of us, and there are 19, we can easily beat them. We can easily beat them and run away from hellfire. But we get deceived by numbers, right? Maulana says those other people, they're like mercury, they're like quicksilver, they're empty, they're mindless, they're bihush bijan, they don't have a soul. So Ishan Hichand, they're nothing. All those thousands of people, they're nothing. And this one person is Sad Hizar, Hizaran Hizar, 1,000, 100,000, 1,000,000. قليل إذا عدت كثير إذا شدوا. They're few in numbers but many in force. The quality is what matters. And then there's the short story about the king who used to give more to one person than everyone else in the army. And then the people in the army protest, like, why is this person so special? And he says, I will show you one day. I will show you one day, and then the day of the battle comes. Everyone else flees. Everyone else runs away. This one person remains and keeps fighting. And then the king says, this is why this person was special to me. It was for this reason. So it's the quality of people that matters, not quantity. Yeah, this line, I think it's from Al-Mutanabbi, right? قَلِيلٌ إِذَا عُدْتُ كَثِيرٌ إِذَا شَدُّ. When you count them, there are few, but look at the inward, look at the power, look at the strength.
I think I was thinking of a very important part of this passage, talking about how the khiyal can be distorted. And that's actually, I think, a very important thing in terms of seeking and finding the truth. It is, how should I put it? I think that's actually the essence of what makes the difference between Abu Bakr and Abu Jahl. It's the fact that the person who believes actually tries to move away from all those distortions and tries to remove that chador before that's before their eyes. And I think that's what makes the difference between a person who refuses tibah and the person who accepts it. It's also mentioned time and again in the Quran. For example, the one that you said, هُدًى للمتقين, or the other that you said that قُلْ هُوَ لِلَّذِينَ آمَنُوا هُدًى وَشِفَاءٌ وَالَّذِينَ لَا يُؤْمِنُونَ فِي آذَانِهِمْ وَقْرٌ فَهُوَ عَلَيْهِمْ عَمًى. So if people already believe, then this Quran will be their guide and their cure. But if they don't believe, the same Quran could be blindness for them. Yeah. Or the verse, for example, قُلْ مَنْ كَانَ فِي الضَّلَالَةِ فَلْيَمْدُدْ لَهُ الرَّحْمَنُ مَدًّا. So if a person remains in that being astray, then Allah will even continue, will let him continue in that wrong path.
Yes.
So I think everything boils down to our qalb, and the qalb is actually how we perceive the goodness and how we understand, and that's how we connect the inner good with the outer good, and that's when the real theme works. So إِلَّا مَنْ أَتَى اللَّهَ بِقَلْبٍ سَلِيمٍ. So I think this idea of keeping your heart away from these distortions is key in finding and following the truth.
Absolutely, indeed. Once you have a pure heart, you go after pure things, as in the Quran, right? At-tayyibatu lit-tayyibin.
Yeah, exactly.
It's good things that attract good things. Bad things attract bad things.
Exactly. And then, for example, in another verse, it says that so we created some people for the fire. And the first descriptive of those people is that they have hearts, but they can't use that heart in the right way. لهم قلوب لا يفقهون بها. So I think the best idea is to keep the heart healthy, and that is doing away with all these distortions in that khiyar. So I think it kind of tells the same story, points to the same thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, brother Abdur.
Looking at maybe want to describe numbers, how many the truly united person, so to speak, the truly integrated, tawheeded, if you like, person is equal to hundreds and what have you. I think most of the time, most of us exist in hundreds and thousands of ourselves, with little. I certainly experienced that in my own life without always understanding a unity. So now I'm this person who's experiencing that. I'm experiencing that emotion, that desire, this experience, and so on and so forth. And it's not always easy to unite them. We have so many fractured wants and wishes, but ultimately it's the connection that Prophet has or Peer has to help us to become one. That we can become one.
Absolutely. And the closer you are to the one, you become 100,000, because the one is the root of that 100,000. So once, as Hazrat Shams Tabrizi says, right, once you have a branch, you break a branch, that branch is yours. You're one. You're that branch. But once you get to the root, the whole tree is yours, right? So you have the 100,000 branches. They're all you. So yes, Messenger.
Two examples came to my mind regarding the relationship between intention, action, and the heart. I mean, the first one is from, I think, Sadi, as I remember from Sadi. He said, if your heart is pure, they say you are good, even if your hands are empty. But remember, if your hands do not reach out for goodness, the heart remains alone. Goodness begins with intention, but it grows through action, says he. And the second one from Mawlana, it is an history. He says in Masnawi, a candle said, I will shine as brightly as the sun. And the sun smiled and replied, "Oh, candle, your light is a beautiful intention, but can you grow it enough to illuminate the world?" The candle fell silent and melted and disappeared, because it is not just intention, but also deeds that are needed on this path.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely, indeed. It's intention and action, both. Absolutely. Faith, iman, and amal, as the Quran says. Absolutely. Okay, so yeah, inshallah, next week we're going to continue this passage from chapter 2 of Fihi Ma Fihi, and then Maulana is explaining how to acquire that, right? How to remove those veils. So he says, Adami mibayad ke an, you need to take those qaras, those secondary motives, you need to take them away and to purify your power of discerning. And to seek a friend, seek a yar in religion. Din yar shanasist. Religion is to know that yar, know that beloved, know that friend. And it's just beautiful, concise and beautiful. Din yar shanasist. Religion is to know a friend. And I don't think that's captured in the translation. But yeah, the beauty of the concise Din yar shanasist is there in the Persian. So yeah, inshallah, we'll continue this passage next week. Any other reflections before we move on to the Upanishads?
Thank you for that reminder of the dua, Prophet Muhammad ﷺ's dua, which is really encompasses everything that you mentioned today. Allahumma arina al-ashya'a kama hi, wa arina al-haqqa haqqa warzuqna tiba'ah, wa arina al-batila batila warzuqna ijtinabah, which is, I feel like it's the prayer of our times. Alhamdulillah.
Absolutely.